Here we have a 2010 Acura TSX, and we are performing a front end alignment. You need to get the car up on chocks and jack stand and loosen the jam nut, which in this case is already loosened. It's located right here, and the nut and thread are right threaded, so clockwise typically tightens and counterclockwise will loosen it. So in this case, to loosen the jam nut off of this tie rod, you would turn it clockwise, because clockwise would cause it to move away from the tie rod to loosen it, and you want to get a little bit of space in there so that you can make your adjustment using and by the way, this nut on this particular car is a 19, but on some cars it could be different sizes. I used a crow's foot to make it easier to get that nut off. But once you get that jam nut off, you can start making adjustments to the alignment. After you put the wheel back on and lower the car, you'll have to reach underneath the car with a flashlight or something so that you can make an adjustment to this right here with a 14. And essentially, when you turn these threads, they will either go into or out of your outer tie rod end. So if, for example, in this case, if you turn this thread right here clockwise relative to this camera angle, if you turn it clockwise, you'll cause it to turn counterclockwise inside of this tie rod, which will cause the tie rod to push outward. And in this particular suspension setup, if the tie rod pushes outward, it will cause the wheel to pigeon toe inward. If you do the opposite, you would cause it to duck foot outward. In the case of a Honda Accord of this year, you want zero toe, which means you don't want it to be towed in or towed out. So in order to make to know when you have zero toe, we're going to need to set up the next part of this procedure. You want to make sure you're on level ground, and you set up your rectangle. I used fishing line and 3/4 inch PVC piping, so you need to make sure that you cut notches for your line on your pipe, and that the distance between the cuts from left to right is equal. I believe in my case I used about 74.5 inches, and it has to be the same on the front PVC piping, as well as the rear, as well as the front as such. Then you want to make sure that your line runs as close to the center of the wheel as possible by adjusting the height on your jack stands. And then you want to make sure that the distance from the wheel across the axles is the same. So in this case, I measure it this way, and then you can adjust that distance by moving your pipe from side to side until the distance from each side is equal. In this case, it's like 4.6 or so, and you need to make sure it's the same on the other side across the front, and that the numbers are also the same across the rear axle, so that you're nice and square. Then you can go underneath the car, and you can use your 14 and make an adjustment where we talked about earlier to tow your car in or out. In the Honda's case, it's zero tow, so you don't want it towed in or towed out. And how do you know that? You have to measure the distance between the outer both sides of the rim on this side and then on this side. And when you take those measurements, you want to make sure that they measure equally. If they don't measure equally, then that means that your tire is towed in or it's towed out. So you can also buy a camber tool, and the camber number that we're looking for is no more than 1.5 degrees, if possible. After you make all of the adjustments and the distance between here and here is equal across both of your wheels, then you'll need to check and make sure your camber is no more than 1.5 degrees, as well as you have to be sure to tighten up the jam nut against the inner tie rod end. And finally, I find one key to a good alignment is to make sure that your steering wheel remains at the 6 o'clock position. So you're going to find you have to make a lot of adjustments from left to right until you get it just right. And what I find is it's helpful throughout the process as you go from wheel to wheel and keep your steering wheel straight is to just wiggle it from side to side. I take it up to 3, 9, 4, 8, 5, 7, and 6, just to take up any slack or play that might be in the suspension system. So requires a little patience, practice, and trial and error, but it's worthwhile to save about $130 and prevent unneeded tire wear, keep your ride nice and smooth and feeling stable. So hopefully this helps. Take care.